Not again.
Hello? Again?
Not
Again? What's again?
Hello and welcome to the Exploding Appendix podcast. This is the Exploding Appendix Dossier, number 1, Revolution Art Manifesto. The session was recorded on the 4th of May 2021 as part of our avant-garde practice and research group free weekly meetup. We have more on our website, explodingappendix.com, and you can join our meetups in Brighton or online on Zoom. And you can find us on SoundCloud, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Eventbrite. Now the meeting.
Okay, yeah, so I mean we're all here at the Exploding Appendix Dossier number 1 launch party entitled Revolution Art Manifesto. As people come in one by one, really excited to introduce everyone, hear from all the contributors, hear from Bradley about the process of producing it, what everyone's working on at the moment. So Jesse, I'll ask you first, how did you hear about the dossier? What inspired you to contribute the piece that you did? And can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure thing. My name's Jesse. Right now I'm living out in Seattle. I'm an independent musician. I run a YouTube channel with one of my best friends from school who's also a musician. It just originally kind of started as a way for us to just easily share things that we were working on together because we've kind of split up. And then we've just figured, what the hell, we'll put it on public too and just kind of see if it gets any traction, very minor amounts of traction. But it's fun to be able to share things with the world and stuff like that. In terms of the dossier, I'm one of those knuckle dragging, retrograde, Cro-Magnon type people that enjoy the Chapo Chap House podcast, and they have a Discord, and I can't remember who posted something in there, but somebody posted something in there about the dossier, which is how I became aware of Exploding Appendix, and I took a peek and was like, this is super fucking rad. And I would like to participate. And so what we contributed, basically wrote sort of a manifesto, kind of explaining, our sort of esprit de corps and a approach to the music that we like to make, which is, generally a reflection of, sort of the alienation and general sort of malaise that we kind of experience in this glorious end of history in which we're living in, and also as a means to try to be a bit subversive with funky ass beats. You notice that a lot of some of the worst, most atrocious commercials in the world, and also some of the worst, most atrocious sort of messaging in the world uses like incredibly catchy poppy sort of stuff. I'm also one of those intense weirdos who really enjoys disco, so it's just kind of a melding of these various sorts of impulses and using it as a force for good. Because I think that I can recall like back in my college days going off to clubs and dancing and just kind of realizing that like halfway through that, hey, like the all the lyrics to these songs are like pretty horrible. I can't believe that I'm kind of just I'm still dancing even though I'm aware of it. Trying to use that power for good. And I just like funky ass beats. And so and thankfully I was able to be part of the dossier, which has been really awesome. I've been able to go to a few of these meetings, which was a lot easier back when I was unemployed. But now that I'm gainfully employed, requires a little bit of tact and sneaking around, although here and there, use of lunch breaks when available.
Yeah, thanks for sneaking around for us. We appreciate it. Bradley, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just really pleased. I really enjoyed this piece, partly just because it had really great writing, but really combined with like some really great music to listen to at the same time. And I thought that was really one of the things that I really just enjoyed so much about this. That really nice balance.
Can I just add that it coincided with me finding out a guy called John Mouse as well. So getting really into like funky pop music, which is like really like kind of on point with its sort of challenging message and like playing with the motifs of pop music. So it was very well timed and I really loved it.
Well, right on, man. Thank you. And yeah, I must say this has been like an incredible community, and like the people that you're able to interview, like the discussion that comes up, like it's been really awesome. I've been incredibly sad that circumstances have been kind of difficult for me to make these work, but I'm definitely going to try to make it work more in the future. And I think as things kind of settle down a little bit and I get a little bit more established, I'll have a bit more opportunity to be able to kind of take time away. But yeah, this is a really cool thing, and I'm really glad that this exists, and everybody that contributed to it just had dynamite, really interesting, thought-provoking, really cool stuff. I think this is a really important and vibrant sort of community, and it's super groovy.
I'm sure Bradley, I'm sure everyone and the contributors are really flattered, and me, but just by default as well. I don't know how much more time you've got, but maybe I could ask you, because Harvey was talking about how he got into deadmau5 at the same time as he saw your piece. So that made me wonder about what your influences are.
Oh yeah, well, as I say, weirdly enough, when I was a kid, and I don't know if this was a thing over there, they actually had, like, Sesame Street would make like sing-along videos, and they would also make dance-along videos. And one of the dance-along videos they had was Sesame Street Fever, which was just like a straight up, parody of Saturday Night Fever. That honestly, like, there's one where, and I can maybe link to a YouTube video of this. But there's one where Grover is basically recreating like the white leisure suits. John Travolta just kind of strutting into the club and like owning everything, and Grover. Just shreds, and I don't know, like that really just arrested me, and my parents, will play that sort of stuff, and so yeah, like definitely disco is a massive sort of influence, and then more sort of on the more avant-garde sort of side of things, I really like Sun Ra. I was very lucky to kind of come into that orbit as a younger person, and that just blew my mind. Things like brass construction. I'm also like secretly and internally in my soul probably like a 72-year-old man, so like I spent most of my youth just like listening to prog and stuff like Focus and Soft Machine, and like the whole Canterbury scene is also something that I enjoy. And so kind of the music that I create is more or less just an enormous mashing up of those various elements, except perhaps like a little bit more pointed and less punny than most prog sort of stuff tends to be. I don't know. I've been a massive hermit for most of my youth.
Insulated from
yeah.
the modern. Oh, because one of the questions I had down was what your perception was of the music industry today.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty brutal, but like I also don't really participate. I don't know. I kind of view my music more like making a ship in a bottle. The advantage of modern sort of technology is that I can have, say, like 5 or 6 vocal lines. I can have 7 or 8 different sort of musical things. Like it would be essentially impossible for me to perform live unless I basically just, had it on a laptop and stood in front of it and recited things. So I don't know. I guess in truth, I've always been somewhat of a bit of a reclusive sort of person, not to psychologize myself, but I was a very colicky baby. I really didn't enjoy being held by anyone else other than my parents. And I think that just kind of really got me off on the wrong foot. So I've always tended to kind of, be a bit reclusive and kind of keep to myself. So yeah, just, I don't know, getting on like vortices and wormholes of specific types of genres and just kind of like sticking with them for years at a time. One of my goals as an older and wiser person now is to try to, get a little bit into like the actual world and connect with things like this, which of course I've unfortunately proceeded to fail at for the past several months.
It's been really great having you when you are able to come. It's just hard when you're a job on a different time zone.
It's a little tricky.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is. It is, the material comfort is very nice. The elimination of that sort of just undulating, miasma of existential dread, now replaced with a different sort of dread and anxiety. So,
Where are you based, and what's keeping you from us at the moment?
I'm out in Seattle, and I'm working for a company where I'm actually I'm like the manager of the whole customer support department. So I have a lot more responsibility than I've had in a while, so just kind of adjusting to the demands of that sort of a position.
Head of customer support for a recluse.
I mean, you're playing a role. So I've always enjoyed like acting and performing and things like that. You can kind of, I don't know, like to a certain extent, like anytime you leave your house, you're performing some sort of a thing, and more likely than not, you're kind of performing roles for yourself internally based on whatever sort of like self self-image you've built up to help yourself get through the day. And so, you know, in this sort of professional context, you know, I'm not necessarily myself. I'm this entity that's a very helpful person that's very happy to hear about anybody's problems and sort them all out. And, you know, like, I guess it also does give you, unfortunately and nefariously, like a really nice little kick of dopamine, because I mean, you are solving problems. People are being like, hey, thank you for solving that problem. And it's like, man, I've sorted out more things in the last 2 hours than I have in like the last 4 years of my own life. So, you know, at least I have some, you know, some semblance of progress in that regard.
Yeah, it's good to have that feedback.
Can I ask something? I don't know if you're planning to ask this. Are you working on a space opera?
Yes, I am. I've actually completed it.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, I'll say, if you'll suffer a minor little bit of self-promotion, you know, if that's not too absolutely reprehensible. But yeah, it's completed. It's available on right now on Bandcamp. And also is being released serially on our YouTube channel. So if you go to Guard Dog Records and you look up Vercingetorix, which is basically like Vercingetorix, except feather at the end. So, you know, Vercinfeaterix. It's all there. You know, it's called Your Life on Mars. And it's about a dystopian neoliberal sort of human settlement on Mars, where everything is perfectly ordered, and you know, our protagonists are some good old PMCs who are just living the dream, loving life, taking their fully unregulated nutritional pills that boost their cognition, but unfortunately may also cause some side effects such as intrusive thoughts, hallucinations, and other things, which makes them start having very strange and morbid visions, and makes them start questioning the society in which they live, and makes them realize that the fact that they all live in these enclosed, you know, sort of habitation pods, you know, that maybe, you know, there's a whole planet out there, and that's rather bizarre. A place that's premised apparently on total individual freedom. Why would you restrict that sort of a movement? So they go explore and discover a dark and nefarious and terrible secret underpinning their entire society, and are punished and basically sonically and mentally tortured for it until they become pliant, good, proper Martians once again. And then they settle back down and, you know, into their lot, fully accepting it, loving life once again. If there's a chat, actually,
give us the link.
Yeah, that's probably a better idea than me telling you about it.
It sounds amazing. I don't know, tell us any last messages before you leave. But I think while you're doing that, maybe Bradley, you could, because we kind of missed the opportunity to introduce like what your mission is with the dossier and how it connects to your project in Exploding Appendix as a whole. Just give us a brief sense of the direction.
I mean, part of it was that I started work. Max and Harvey started coming along to the sessions, and we were talking about producing a publication that would kind of go alongside the meetups. Which has always kind of been one of the aims that I kind of wanted to achieve with this project, with Exploding Appendix as a whole. But meetups themselves sort of took kind of precedence. That kind of became a nice way of bringing people together. And one of the things I'd started writing was a series of rehearsals for a manifesto. And so the second one outlines 10 different research units. I was like thinking along the lines of, well, I think we weren't sure exactly originally what was going to be the topics for each session, but then gradually I sort of came to the idea that the different research units outlined in the second rehearsal for a manifesto would sort of guide at least the first 10 volumes of the dossier. So I think the first one is technically the avant-garde art research unit, but we kind of really liked the idea of, we picked out 3 themes that we sort of saw as quite interconnected and helped us think through the idea of the avant-garde. So that was Revolution Art Manifesto. And then, so the second one is the Subversive Rationalisms Research Unit. And so that's the one we've got a call for submissions on, but it's called Reason Subversion. So whereas this one had 3 words, this next one has reason and subversion. And the idea is to, in a similar way, think about how those 2 things relate. And then as things go on, there's like the individual and freedom, the common treasury, democracy and participation, utopia, technology and futurism, strategy and tactics, liberation and emancipatory struggle, and Religion and Revelry. That was the like 10. I assume each one is going to be a way of thinking through the avant-garde, but from a very different perspective. So that's the kind of overall idea. And maybe once we get to publishing the first 10, maybe we'll do something different. I'm not 100% sure. At the moment, those are the things that are guiding the projects.
Amazing. So the idea behind the first one is to take these various concepts that are all embedded in the avant-garde project and to see how they relate. Revolution Art Manifesto.
Yeah, well, I think in the long term, I really want us to produce. I started trying to write an encyclopedia to accompany this, and then realized that this was completely overly ambitious to write an encyclopedia to accompany the first issue of a dossier. I like this idea of thinking through different because there's a relationship between appendix being that thing at the back of the book where you've got lots of fragmented bits that don't really connect, and also an encyclopedia which has lots of fragmented things that don't really connect. And so we talked about this idea of Encyclopedia Appendicitis being this kind of title for a kind of encyclopedia which would somehow subvert the encyclopedia but do something really odd, but would take that format. And even though this is the dossier, I see those introductions as having that kind of encyclopedic kind of dimension. So I suppose that is sort of, I've lost my train of thought. So I started reading one of the comments and then I lost my train of thought.
It's a big project. And the encyclopedia is just part of that big mountain project, but it's very inspiring to have in front of you. You know, there's a lot to work on, and it's motivating, and it's very interesting. I can't wait to see what contributions come for the next dossier. Jesse, I don't know if you have to go, or you just want to linger in the background, or do you want to say bye?
I am probably going to have to leave. I'm so sorry to just burst in here and be like, blah, 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 and then, run off like a asshole. But I am going to have to burst in here and go, blah, 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 and now run off like an asshole. It's really, having, again, like, just incredibly impressed with everybody's contributions. I'm very sorry that circumstances are preventing me from being able to, meet or get to know any of you. This time, terminal optimist that I am, I believe that there will come a time in the future where all my time will be my time, and we'll bro out like motherfuckers, and it'll be a jolly old time, and it'll be groovy and a whole lot of fun. And I'm just really appreciative and just enamored with just everybody that I've come in contact with in this whole project. It's been awesome and really fulfilling and really buoying, for the old soul. Hope you're all able to get at it a bit. I know it's like probably like 7, 8 over there. So hope you slam some back and, get a little loose and a little goofy. Once 5 rolls around, I'll rip a couple shots and just scream out my window, generally toward the east. And when you hear that faint flittering and, loose sort of wind hitting your earlobes, that'll be me yelling out in solidarity with all of you. So really appreciate it, guys. So sorry. Whoosh, whoosh. I got meetings and shit. So such is life. Hang in there, solidarity, comrades. And, they can't take our souls, and the power of our souls will be overwhelming. I truly believe it. All righty. Take it easy.
Thank you, Jesse.
Ready to and run. Until we meet again. A biento.
Wow, if he ends all of his meetings like that.
No wonder he's head of customer support.
That was good. Lucy, I know you have to leave soon as well, so let's hear from you next. Could you introduce yourself?
That's just terrible.
Well,
there's so much energy. I'm not on the same energy level.
Just worry about that when you have to say bye. It's fine until then. Just introduce yourself for us, Lucy. So Lucy she contributed to the dossier as well. She contributed a piece called Everything Rests on a Tablecloth with Lemons. We can talk about what you wrote. First, who are you? Where are you from? What do you work on? And how did you hear about the dossier?
Yeah, I'm Lucy. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently in Belfast, where I'm from, in the north of sunny, rainy Ireland today. But I'm based in Glasgow since the autumn in 2020, so not very long. I've kind of been moving around a bit from London to Berlin to Belfast to Madrid for a couple of years before COVID, and now I'm in Glasgow. So I've realised I'm one of these people that maybe doesn't like to stay in the same place for too long, which is starting to make me feel a bit sad. because I like the idea of staying somewhere. So it'll be great. Hopefully I'll find somewhere to stay. Maybe it'll be Brighton. But anyway, yeah, I'm an artist and writer. At the moment I'm studying part-time in the Glasgow School of Art, doing a postgraduate course in art writing, which is very weird and kind of a strange term, but it's really exciting and intense. There's only 2 art writing courses in the UK, so I think we have a only child complex from that, where we feel quite special. I can't really remember where I found out about the project in general. I was just thinking about titles, actually. This isn't really answering what you asked me to do, but it's interesting. Bradley was talking about like the title having like 3 words for the dossier that I contributed to, the first one, but the next one being like 2 words. And I was thinking that's kind of use of all the titles. Like, your project sounds so big, but to have it mapped out, it sounds, it feels like it's like Harry Potter or something, you know, like knowing so much into the future. I really struggle to see into the future what I'm doing. So that's really impressive. You've got a lot of things going on. Yeah, it's been fun to see the other works in the dossier as well, and also to see so many things that were using different media, like art or sound and performance or photographs and different kind of types of experimentation, because that's definitely what I'm into. My piece had a couple of kind of depressing quiet videos in it. I've just realized that if I am going to read from it, it's definitely like not very happy or fun. So I feel like maybe I could just I should read something else that would be happy and fun, but I'm not going to do that either. Before I came on Zoom, whilst I was eating my dinner, I was watching The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and that was quite fun. And I've kind of got this habit of like not being able to talk about professional things on Zoom, and not that it's a professional space, but I had this in a meeting earlier in the week where everyone had to do introductions, and I just talked about like what I was doing that day in a very small scale, which probably is something I do in my work, and everyone else was talking like really amazingly about their work. So forgive me if I don't speak very clearly, but Zoom anxiety is very real.
Would it be okay if I asked, but just to read like a little bit, regardless of how depressing it is?
Yeah,
nice
no, I'm
to
definitely
hear a
up
bit.
for reading. Should I just do a bit of reading now? Are you sick of my voice?
No, do it.
Okay, cool. Am I speaking too fast? Trampolines with black netting around them, unidentifiable sawing sounds. The oven fan, not knowing what to do, so letting the day slip through your fingers, which feels like a waste. Time is precious, but it's also just a concept, a parallel line on a different axis, reading. Although you might just move over the text with your eyes for several pages before you realize you can't recall any of it. There must be a word for this, but you don't know it. There are documents, printouts, folded on top of each other, creating a white rectangle on the mess of bedclothes and pajama tops beside you. You miss people and the idea of wearing makeup. You are irritable and irritating. You look at your phone too much. The day, the night, 2 parts of one story. I feel more alone at night, but more comfortable too. The switch of trying can flick off, whilst the street lamps come on. The laptop moves from the desk to the bed. I watch a series of videos, The Self-Illuminating Pen, by Sarah Tripp on Map Magazine's website. These are a collaboration between Tripp and Isabel Lutz-Smith, and they give motion to the 5 texts Tripp writes and show an image of the light her pen casts when it's pressed down onto smooth-lined pages, a disembodied hand holding it. From the artist's website, these works are a series of letters to the editor, one writing in the small R's. Should I put the dinner on and other non-interesting thoughts pucker the edges of a headache? I read online about Millie Thompson's residency with Ackerman Daly. I see 3 videos in small rectangles of Vimeo blue. Soft scratchings, that noise almost like cotton wool grinding against itself. Can you remember it? A felt tip on paper. The sound comes before or after we see the words appear on screen in their animated chunkiness. The sound is faster than the video, and it continues after the images have stopped moving. Do you ever have that feeling inside your head like you've stopped, but you're still moving, stepping onto a bus in the bright sunlight, slamming a car door on the street? I drop a plate into a washing up dish in this kitchen. The water both stops its motion and makes it sink. There are new words for this already, viewing artwork online. The intimacy of the small screen experience reminds me of commuting, watching Netflix on my phone and sometimes listening to what other commuters are watching if they aren't using headphones, whilst on a bus at 7 a.m. in the pitch dark, lashing rain. But art is different. I stand up to grab a pen and something slaps the ground. It's a photograph. I'm using it as a bookmark, 2 fields separated by a line cutting just below the center. At the top, limitless blue sky from out a plane's window. The bottom, the grey-white plastic of the plane's interior, so close that it looks like the mottled skin of a dead body. And in the middle, the tiny round hole that breathes air between the 2 perspex sheets. Crystalline ice gathered like frosty scratches in a ring and as a rim between the inside and outside. I'm reading about Rachel Cusk travelling to Greece in outline, feeling time suspended inside the plane because of the lack of friction between the space and bodies hurtling towards their destinations. I used to be able to write on journeys, the idea of movement, like a buggy lulling a child to sleep, relaxing and quick. This opening up of a fixed place to write from. It makes me think of Moira Davey, Chris Marker, and many others observing with camera or pen, people commuting on trains and buses. Maybe I'll stop there. That's kind of near the end. Or maybe I'll give you one more line. I think of all the viewing I've done over the past while through the same rectangle of laptop light that I'm writing this on, and return to my bedroom's images and objects with new eyes. Those that have become sacred, those that have ossified over time. When the image is new, the world is new too. The end. Thanks for listening. Thanks for
Round of applause.
accepting my work. Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit of a different vibe than our previous speaker, but you know, someone actually who read it fed back that they thought it was kind of like a critical thought, but they it's like an artist that I really admire, actually, a really cool filmmaker. But they said, I read your thing, it seems to be about boredom. And I was like, maybe it is. But it was great to have it like encapsulated in one word. Very neat.
Yeah, but even if it's about boredom, doesn't mean it's boring.
No, I think some of the way it's written is really powerful and it's just got this really lovely reflective, and it's got a really nice pace. I think the pace of the piece is actually really, really nice as well. Yeah, lots of really great stuff going on in it. And I thought one of the things that made it really exciting for this issue was that it just sort of broke up. It was just quite different for some of the other things that came, and it fitted in as well, but it just sort of just seemed to add something that was kind of just doing something different.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think it's because I was thinking about the title. I'm quite into titles, and obviously this has got a long title. Sometimes I have really long titles. There's another one that's the strong, sporty girl from school had a baby whilst I was trying to get home from a night out. And that's a favorite title of mine. But anyway, having the 3 words in your kind of open call as well, I think it has maybe made space for these kind of more rhizomatic things and practices. And that's kind of interesting because it's not like there's no fixed kind of binary or like points, you know, it's something that's more like in movement, maybe.
I was going to ask you about themes and stuff, so I'll mention a few things that I got from it. But the artist you respect said they thought it was about boredom. I mean, what do you think it's about?
Well, I suppose, like, ostensibly, I think it's about, they kind of trying to think about online viewing, and because I talk so much about the different things that I'm viewing or reading online, and I was kind of just in a period of like thinking about that all the time. Maybe because I'd started this master's in art writing and I was trying to figure out like what art writing was in that moment, and whereas I might usually write sort of art criticism and more like theoretical texts, but trying to bring together the creative and critical. I suppose it maybe reads a bit like a research diary or something, which is, I think, a weakness in it. But at the same time, I think by talking about our encounters with online viewing, because it's such a big part of, obviously in COVID times, it's been a big part of our lives, but even normally, it's where we spend a lot of time. So I was thinking about that a little bit, but even though, I'm not sure how that comes across. And I suppose then throughout it, the mention of time does start to become a bit more formed or less formless, and talking about commuting in particular in like that work I was outlined. I don't know if anybody's read it, by Rachel Cusk. It starts on a plane, but it's like a novel over the space of a journey. But I suppose, commuting. I didn't realize how many times I mentioned commuting and commuting time. Obviously, I was really missing it. And I think that kind of sense of longing, I hope, comes across, whether it be longing for different things like people or art, or maybe just like kind of connection with arts and literature. And maybe that lack of connection is something that comes across then in the kind of mundane and the descriptions of things like the objects. Wish there was a joke in there somewhere, but there's not.
So one of the themes I was going to ask you about is isolation, because it's timely in the sense that it's very reflective, I think, of a lot of people's experiences of lockdown, especially if you spend a lot of that time on your own. Say maybe you live alone, or maybe the people who you live with are just away for a lot of the period. Definitely rings true for that. So it seems like in that sense, it's a pandemic piece. And when I talk about isolation, of course, we all have to self-isolate. So there's the self-isolation is a catalyst for pre-existing vulnerability when you feel isolated. And I felt that come across quite strongly, especially in your references to watching stuff on YouTube. And I feel like we only do that when we're on our own.
Yeah, or you only kind of travel through online space in that kind of way, like through tabs and through different links whenever you're on your own, because if there's someone else, you might, watch something with them, but it's not the same kind of journey. Yeah, I think isolation is, I've spent a lot of time living alone recently. About a month ago, I moved in with another person, which has like been a big change. And yeah, I don't know, it's very strange to have someone else in my flat all the time.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was cool. Her name's Bobby. She's great. I think maybe by writing about art as well and writing about these videos that I've seen. I don't know if everybody probably hasn't seen the piece, but there's links embedded, so you can it kind of takes you to different places. And the work at the start that I talk about with the disembodied hand that's like writing, and then the other video, they're both videos of artists writing. And I suppose I was thinking about writing, as I kind of always end up writing about writing and everything. But I suppose the isolation of the writer is interesting. And in those artworks, I think it was interesting because the first one is literally just a disembodied hand. And I was thinking about kind of voice as well, because the voice that you hear in any writing is disembodied. Like there's never a body whenever you're reading someone's work, unless you're receiving it in a different way, like in a performance or something. And then so maybe part of the isolation comes through in like an absence of body, or maybe there's a bit of a tension hopefully being created then whenever I'm talking about things like clothes and makeup and things that kind of relate back to the bodily, if that makes sense.
I'm really interested in how you thought about your piece relating to the dossier. And that's not to say, that's not me saying it doesn't. I just think that it's a very interesting way that you were writing about things, because as you said, there's sort of like this rhizomatic, or like the just flowing of thought and piecing things together, weaving it together, and there's a bit of fragmentation. And how do you feel that, if anything is the center of your piece, it is that kind of rhizomatic, not using a concept to get to something that relates to things like art to me? But in terms of the other two elements, the revolution manifesto, what is it? Because this is something that I personally I agree with, that it's about that fragmentation coming out that is almost the revolutionary thing. But why do you think that your piece related to those two other, manifesto and revolution?
That's a hard question. I suppose with manifestos, there's I'm coming from a fine art background, from the art world, from commercial art galleries, and that's my kind of background. And I suppose with manifestos, I think less of political manifestos, or less of, well, maybe one I read recently was like the Xenofeminist Manifesto, a little verso book, but I think more of manifestos that have been part of artworks, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose I just think of art as its own manifesto for life in a way, and for our thinking. And I suppose revolution as well. Yeah, I mean, I probably wasn't addressing that like super with a very direct link. Hopefully the form of the writing, hopefully people don't just think it's weak, but obviously there's a lot of intention behind it, and that it's not revolutionary, but it's part of a new kind of field of what I could call art writing, which is hoping, I suppose, to speak to this kind of quiet avant-garde which is emerging in that field, and as kind of writing as artistic practice and like research-based practice or practice-based research and these kind of things. So that's kind of how I thought about it. I suppose also I try not to ever make things too prescriptive, like try to keep things loose, and I'm always trying to keep things kind of in movement in my thinking, but then also in how that thinking is articulated. So
I think actually one of the reasons that the piece really worked, I felt, or one of the reasons we wanted to include it, was precisely because it was harder to think how it related to the topics. But it seemed like it just fitted. It felt appropriate, even though it was harder to place in the actual. It was harder to place in relation to the themes in a very clear way.
Yeah, and I think I'm really into like into work that does this, but also trying to do this in my own work of trying not to put things in boxes, to put lines around things, but also like an artist that I really love, Tai Shani, recently was saying something, I think it was in relation to COVID, but she said like, you know, artist responses to COVID are like urgent, but even if they're not, even if they're much more oblique, and if it's not kind of obvious, I suppose, that doesn't make them any less urgent. So I suppose sometimes I think in like, I'm interested in things like tacit knowledge and something that can be still powerful, even if it is doing something in a quiet way.
I was going to ask you about your approach to writing. Is related to what you've just been talking about. You mentioned you think about your writing as an artistic practice, and then you mentioned that it was performative in some sense. Does that relate to what you were just saying? Is this?
Yeah, I suppose I should have maybe introduced it, a little bit more, but the term art writing is kind of speaking to art. I suppose, okay, there's like a kind of a way to frame it in language which I found quite easy before, which is writing about art, writing to art, and writing as art, writing with art. So if we just change those prepositions and like move the writing around art, and I think it's very slippery, it's kind of annoying. Yeah, I suppose writing as artistic practice. So I see it as like a studio practice. So it kind of the writing, like I was always making art, and that could have been a different media, video and performance. I mostly work with performance and video, a little bit of installation, and then the writing kind of came through in sound and different things, and now I'm kind of, it's like the art is disappearing and I'm just being left with writing. But yeah, I'm interested in artists who work with writing as a studio practice. I suppose it's just basically thinking about writing in terms of art, or like in the art world, which is a horrible term, as opposed to in like a literary sense or an academic sense. And we think a lot about and talk a lot about discipline and academic disciplines and where it sits in relation to that, because there is this whole like critical element, but there's a lot of like critical studies or critical thinking going on. I think it's something that like a lot of people are doing and they don't realize, you know, like that it's a silly like term. Why do we have to have these kind of neologisms or whatever? Like I think a lot of the work in the dossier was I would see as art writing completely. It's an exciting project. Maybe I should get you to come into our course and do like a talk someday.
But yeah, I was interested in that performativity element.
Oh yeah, performativity. Oh yeah, I suppose it's because the writing being performative, just like attending to kind of performance within the text, and lots of people do that, but yeah, really paying attention to how the language is operating in a performative way. I suppose it comes also from performance studies, or a lot of the kind of academic thinking around the place where I'm trying to work or in art writing. It comes from performance studies as well, which I think is like a big influence. There's a really good book, if anybody's interested, called The Creative Critic, Writing as / about practice. I'll put it in the chat afterwards. Basically, it all comes from performance studies, and it's the relationship between, I think the relationship between performance and writing is just really strong in that whenever you're working that kind of way. Or you have to see it as, you know, a performance of the kind of like in the tone or whatever ways that you're operating in form and style. Otherwise, I think it's like lacking, you know? Yeah,
the way I understand performative is like quite basic. The performative aspect of an utterance or a sentence with meaning is not related to the actual like semantic meaning of the words, but the meaning attached to the act of saying it and that kind of thing. So is that right? That's
kind of exactly in the Creative Critic book, for example. That's exactly what they're talking about. That's interesting. And I suppose in this piece, maybe it's not as pronounced as in other work that I've done, like that kind of, I suppose, like type of conceptualization in the language or in the writing or in the performance of the writing. But that's definitely something I'm interested in.
But as part of that performativity, it kind of makes sense that we get these themes. They're not inherent to the letter of what you say. So these themes about isolation, the boredom, they're not in the letter of what you say, but nonetheless, we feel it, and that's kind of the performative element. Yeah, it's not, like directly talked about. It's kind of implicit, and it's something that's like built up throughout a text or throughout a work. There's no argument. We'll move on to somebody else, but first, you have to give us. You have to give us an epic goodbye, and you have to tell us about what you're working on at the moment. I feel like I need to like sing a song or like a ballad. I don't know how to get any sort of epic goodbye in the same kind of cards or the same sort of table. Yeah, basically, well, what I'm working on at the minute, which is really horrible self-promotion, but I've written a little
book with a small publishing project in London, and it's available now. You don't have to buy it. It's expensive. It's £12. But if anybody's interested in reading it and they don't have £12 and they're still really interested, they could email me. I'm going to put the link to it there, and I could send a PDF or something. There's a similar style in lots of parts of it to the text that was in Exploding Appendix in the dossier, a book length text of like creative and critical writing. So the form, it kind of changes between like poetry and memoir and essay and different things. Hopefully it's good, because it's launching on Thursday. I'm really scared that everyone's going to hate it. To see what happens. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody. And yeah, I was emailing with like Harvey and Bradley and Max, and thanks Rob, and thanks everyone for hosting the work and creating such an amazing dossier. It's really good.
Yeah, thank you so much for contributing.
No worries, thanks. I'm excited to see what happens next with all your future projects. Sounds like you've got like 10 years of work ahead of you.
It's good like that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to go in like 5 minutes, but
Okay, cool. You can slip out the back door. But yeah, thank you, Lucy. I'll pick another contributor at random. Federico, do you want to introduce yourself? So Federico submitted a few art pieces. Tell us about them and tell us about yourself.
So first of all, hello everyone. Sorry if my English is a bit rusty. Trying my best. Just give a brief introduction. I used to be based in Brighton town until end of 2019. So I know Bradley and his works since a good while. Always enjoyed the projects, even though often feeling coming from a different perspective. Got in touch with Brad and mentioned about this new project launching. When he sent me the subject, he mentioned about the project, mentioning the subjects. I felt they were quite close together. I just see pretty much as a whole idea the fact that we were to talk about art, revolution and manifesto. I feel they are deeply connected to each other. So I just sent back to Brad some art, some illustrations of mine, and briefly 3 pieces. One based about the idea of personal freedom. Second one, which was previously created for an environmental organization. So it was related to deforestation and the need of stepping in and doing something regarding this issue. And the third image was based on a Syrian politician, an activist, which was murdered in 2019, in autumn 2019. From militia backed by the Turkish army and government. So yeah, I just sent these images, and Brad was happy to show them.
Thank you. And can you tell us also a little bit about you as an artist and your career and what led you to be the artist you are today?
So basically, I was in the UK for 11 years and studied in London, did like a illustration graphic design course. But mostly being into art and really loving drawing and doing art since day one, I guess. Regarding my latest year's approach to my work, it was often based on issues that I felt quite relevant to talk about or to develop or just to know more in order to have your own idea. Quite often the works went also on a personal project pathway. So basically, as an illustrator, I tend to work both on commissioned works or personal projects. But telling the truth, I think in the past maybe few years, I've been more concentrate on the personal projects. And these took like a more space within my daily activity and production. So yeah, I tend to focus often on environmental, social issues, projects where all these influences are combined and mixed together. They create something which is the addiction of these in relations to the feeling I have towards these ideas. and topics.
So how do you see your work as related to the three concepts in the title?
Yeah.
Revolution Manifesto.
Maybe let's try to describe in a simple way. Art, in my opinion, is when you try to create something that doesn't still exist in the tangible world, comes from you, has this great energy that has to be communicated. I like to call myself more an image maker, an illustrator, where the opposition, or more than the opposition, the distance that takes from art itself, in a pure sense, is the fact that you try to communicate something for an audience, while as an artist, you don't necessarily have this urge. So yeah, my works comes from this aspect, this initial input, where there is an idea or like a subject I want to talk, and my way of talking is a visual language. So that's revolution. I really like to think that revolution is just the answer we give within ourselves to the outer world. And following a Lucy idea, revolution, it can be quiet indeed, it can be loud. Probably we tend to associate the word revolution with something loud and provocative. Nevertheless, I think revolution can be just the smallest and the most slow action in our life can still be an act of revolution. It's just the result of our inside, our soul. And manifesto, I would like to describe, or I like to image the idea of manifesto as the result of the piece that we bring to life. I believe these three words are strictly connected to each other.
That's a beautiful answer. I was looking up etymology of manifest. I think it comes from manifestare, which means to make public, make obvious.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense, the end product.
You see what is
letting
cool?
it out.
I think what is interesting is the fact so what is public? Because obviously in the common sense, the public is the society, and then we have like a public space and so on. When we take these ideas out of the common context, the public can become like just a step further from our deepest inside. It can just be like somehow it can be a journey to something that needs to happen. So somehow the revolution and the manifesto, the steps that in my case as an image maker I'm making in order to get to the point which is based in a near or long distance future. So it's somehow a work in progress.
Speaking from myself, when we were looking at the pieces that came in to the manifesto, yours was the one that really, really struck me immediately as being very related to all of the three topics, and the way that you just put it then makes a lot of sense to me.
I think the attention should be put on the attitude you have toward your art practice. In my case, I think these elements, they are quite cemented within my way to work. And they are quite, radicate inside my soul, and the way I figure out to do something I'm trying to do every day. So, yeah, as I said, it's more like putting, one brick or like growing branches one after the other.
I wonder about your process. So like I'm a sort of academically, that's kind of my background, is sort of writing essays, preparing them in that way. Even though my partner is an artist, I'm pretty ignorant towards it. When you're creating the pieces that you did, what is the process that you go through in order to get to that final image? Is this something that you feel like comes upon you, like inspiration, or is it a building process where certain ideas will marry with other ones?
Just 1 second, I need to plug the phone, otherwise I don't have internet. Pardon me, 1 minute.
I opened a celebratory bottle of Prosecco to celebrate the launch party. Has everyone else got theirs? Bradley sent it in the post.
I'm going to get another beer.
Sorry for this. It's such a beautiful thing talking about, the way you get to create what you do. In my personal case, it's definitely a consequence of exercise and practice every day and knowing more yourself. And to be honest, it's not just a straight line. It's more like a roller coaster. There are period in your life where you are more connect with yourself and you're more in balance with the outer world, and things comes out more naturally. When you get to that point, I think that's the point where you can start to create something meaningful. And for meaningful, I mean something that truly reveals what you are. So regarding the practice, is definitely based on inspirations that combines with memories. You can call it dreams, you can call it, nightmares, but definitely something that is being there inside you for a good while, that matches with something that comes. Plus, I think the most enjoyable aspect in creating art, generally speaking, is that you have to allow yourself to leave a space of emptiness when you create, because it's very true that things comes while you are trying, while you are doing, and then the final result is made up by adding elements and removing elements, and finding elements that you didn't believe they could be there. So it's really this sort of abstract approach, or actually, to be more clear, rather than abstract, you follow an intuition and you let it go. Despite, there is always a bit of doubt in terms of not knowing how these can possibly be made, or how can possibly come out. It's very important to leave a space empty. I mean, within the inside the on the paper, or on the paper where you write, or whatever is your art form. But yeah, leave this empty space where emptiness helps to create the final piece.
I've never thought of it like that before, but in a way, it's almost the opposite of academic writing, where academic writing, you will have an idea and you will hold to it, and that will be the thread that guides the way that you think. Whereas that kind of practice is the reverse of that. It's starting somewhere and trying to let go of the concept that might be sort of anchoring you in one.
Maybe I try to clarify more this point. There is indeed, I call it an intuition, where there is something that initially drives you to that direction. Let's say it's an idea, is a subject, is a way you want to draw a face or an expression. But this thing needs to match, or more than match, needs to be implemented with the feelings of yourself in that moment. And those feelings, they are not necessarily the same when you had the first idea. And those feelings, they are influenced by the practice and the atmosphere around you. I mean, in the environment and inside you as well. So there are different energies that they merge together, and eventually they allow you to create what you do.
Back in 2017, I think, we put some of your pieces up on a Tarkovsky that you did. And one of the things I thought was really interesting about that piece was you sort of really went philosophically and sort of spiritually into the works of Tarkovsky, the films, and then sort of did these drawings that sort of emerged from them. And I think in your work, there's a real engagement with ideas through drawing, through that sort of process of illustration, I guess.
Definitely. I mean, Brad knows my works, I guess, quite well. He saw quite a few actually. And yeah, telling the truth, I guess that project really took me to another direction. I got so much impressed by the works of Andrei Tarkovsky that I just decided to first. I started, drawing and sketching frame stills of his films, his movies, and then I ended up creating images that they were so much influenced by the ideas faced by the master, combined, yeah, my personal opinion. It's beautiful that, with that movie director, I really started to look at cinema with different eyes and a different heart. And that despite, 5 years has passed from that moment, and I watch quite a lot of movies nowadays, I mean, art house movies. It's beautiful, still to believe that that filmmaker is still the most, unique filmmaker ever found in this world. It's both. What I'm saying is, it's beautiful when your ideas evolves and take a different directions and maybe moves away from the initial idea. But at the same time, it's also beautiful when, despite years past, your feelings and your idea are still close very much to that initial point. That's to talk about, that filmmaker. Coming back to what Bradley said, definitely from that time I start to look art and my practice as an image maker in a different way from how I did before. So it was like, I don't know if it's right to say in English, like a breaking through point. Yeah, so it was a good breaking through point for me at that moment.
When you're describing your process, you're very self-transparent. You have the capacity to understand your own subjective approach to art, which it seems like a skill to have. So I was wondering if you thought about that yourself, if you tried to cultivate that kind of self-transparency. So do you know what I mean by self-transparency? You understand where your own motivations come from. So that's the one thing. And then the way you describe art, you also seem to place a certain degree of truthfulness in a high position. So the measure for you to produce good art is how representative it is of your own commitments. So I think that's really interesting that you display that, as you indicate that it's an important requirement for an artist. And then in the line of, okay, you have the thing that constrains your art is how truthful you are to who you are, which means you need to know who you are. Particularly, how do you think that informed like the style of the pieces that you contributed to the piece?
Generally, it's a beautiful point and it's a beautiful question as well. Yeah, first of all, I believe that all the art we create, and for art, I mean the one that is pure, and for purity, I mean something that is reflects really what we are and what we want to say, must be personal. That's my approach, obviously. Art, when it's real, is personal. So, in other words, is experience. Otherwise, is a representation of something that is not complete somehow because lack of experience. The experience we do in life allows us to discover the inside of things, which is connect with ourselves. From this point of view, I believe that I need to talk of things that deeply influence my soul, and the way to talk has to be as sincere as possible, as open as possible, open to allow everything to come in and goes out, even though if it's art. I don't really believe in the art for entertaining. I actually take long distance from the approach of creating something visually pleasing for the sake of the final piece. No, at all. My approach has to be, communicate something that I believe in that moment is relevant to communicate. And the language I use, so the technique, is deeply affected by my inner soul, and in these regards, it's such a beautiful thing when you allow yourself this field of freedom where you don't limit yourself in a style. And this is tough, especially when, as an illustrator, or anyway, usually as an artist nowadays, in order to be successful, you should have a sort of a language that can be quite identify easily. So the idea of changing language can be tricky. However, I made a decision a while ago to don't really focus on this, not really focusing on finding a style, a language, and keeping that style and try to promote myself with that style. I'm more interested in creating something using a language or a style that I think is relevant for me in that moment and for telling that story or that thing, and experiment with this as much as possible. And eventually this will bring to something else. And regarding the pastas, that is a tool I have started to use 4 years ago. Before it was quite, the technique itself was more like mixing the colors evenly together, or sort of a blurry way, which I used to find very pleasant. Nowadays it's super sketchy. It represents more generally myself these days. To answer your question, definitely the language is a solution of your inner feeling.
I wonder if I was an artist, what my material would be. It wouldn't be pastel because they're really hard to use.
I don't think anything is hard to use. I guess it's more like there are things that naturally we feel more connect with, and others maybe we found less connect with. It's very true that when you approach something in an emotional way, it's easy to discover. I say this because as a part-time job, I run a workshop for kids, teenager, like secondary school, primary school. So doing art classes with them. And it's very true. When we approach things in an emotional way, it's easier for you to remember that situation, have more enjoying time, and learn more. Federico, you say that your approach of using intuition to express what's true within yourself is a form of improvisation. Yeah, definitely. I mean, maybe I didn't explain truly what I want to say. Is a combination of intuition, so a first idea, plus, leaving space for yourself and for that thing that is coming out. Yeah, leaving space in order to let things, be born. In other words, a combination of gravity and light. Okay, this one is a bit too far. I mean, but it's true. I mean, it's also interesting when we see that the forces found in order to create something, they are forces opposite to each other. So something that is tangible, or something that comes from mind, maybe something that comes from a space that is lighter and wider. Sorry, maybe it's a bit too philosophical, but definitely yes. I guess, when we look the approach of many artists we appreciate, you find that, they have just a sparkle inside themselves coming from somewhere, and the rest is, like the space.
Thank you. Thanks. Your answers are really profound. I really enjoy listening to them. I'm going to move on to the next selection of collaborators, but is there any sort of parting message? I mean, you're going to stick around, of course, but is there anything you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, just briefly, I never seen in my life fireflies, and for me it's just a shameful thing. We all should spend more time outside and be more connected with nature, and fireflies, they are just magic things. I don't know, just working on a series of images. They talk about fireflies, And the initial, the introduction of this project shows like a comet coming to Earth, and it's beautiful, the association of this source of light with those source of lights. So from macro to micro, from the wider world to the tiny world. And then there is a story of a man and a woman.
And is there anywhere we'll be able to see that?
If I would be good and strong enough, maybe a publication. By the moment is still I'm still in the open sea.
You've got a new website, haven't you?
Yeah. I did I launched my new website this week actually. I think I sent the link yesterday, Brad.
So we move on to another piece.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Federico. Pause. So Roger and Sarah Jane contributed a PDF publication, Smashed Glass Manifesto. Two things. Can you introduce yourself? Give us an introduction to the work. And secondly, Bradley, can you take over momentarily whilst
We would class ourselves as interdisciplinary artists. We originally met, and the first things we did was write some songs together, kind of indie music songs. And Sarah Jane's background is in fine arts. She's a sculptor. My background was kind of in writing and in music. I played in different bands. Initially, we had a mad burst of creating about an album's worth of songs. And because we were both quite visual, especially Sarah Jane, that incorporated an album's worth of music videos.
It just kind of happened. All kind of happened at once, didn't it? So,
and there was a lot of creativity just thrown into it. It just kind of burst out of us, really. And then after a couple of years, we kind of always knew we were going to be filmmakers and artists and writers as well. But after a couple of years, we made our first film, and that led on to us doing art installations. Basically, we're really greedy and we want to do it all. So a lot of what's behind the whole idea of Uberoi is breaking down barriers and saying that you can do everything. You can be it all. You can be a writer. You can be a musician. You can be a sculptor. All you're trying to do is express yourself. And if you're collaborators like we are, then you're trying to express at least two inner voices. You just pick up whichever tool is the easiest for doing that.
And we've swapped and matched each other's tools. I haven't just sat in the background saying, I do the fine art bit, I do the sculpture, or, do the writing. We've swapped around because some of the songs we've done, I've done the writing on them, some of the installation, most of them actually. But, and, a lot of the installation work's very visual. It's been writing that we've actually put around the wall. So it's a little bit like what Lucy was saying about the art writing, sometimes you don't really know you're doing it, and it's just a kind of natural thing. So we've looked at writing as an art form in itself, not just, in a writing sort of literal aspect, but in an art aspect as well, and there's no reason why you can't use that in art and in the process of what you're doing, so.
And especially some of the greatest art is the written word in the form of a manifesto. Some of the most powerful art to me has been Tristan Zara's manifestos or Hugo Ball.
Well, I think in the Smashed Glass manifestos, it's got that sort of sense of sort of a Dadaist manifesto or something like that. That really comes through in it.
Yeah, but I mean, Dada is probably the biggest influence as far as our love of manifestos. We looked at the futurists, but they were great. I mean, they started, simultaneity, however you say it. They started they were the big explosion. Futurist manifesto was on the front page of Le Figaro and kind of exploded across the world. They didn't really, excite us that much, the futurists, whereas the Dadaists seem to express something that really reflects who we are, which is kind of like corks floating in a kind of random world that is just quite absurd. If you have just an ocean of like crashing waves and you, the individual, are just this cork floating on it, and nothing really makes much sense. I mean, it's, if you look at like kind of theatre of absurd, kind of Samuel Beckett a lot of those ideas, you know, have obviously filtered from Dada. And Dada was quite nihilistic, it's quite pessimistic, and probably more pessimistic than we are. We're quite sort of cheery characters, really, but we're kind of natural born Dadaists. And we wanted to, much as Kurt Schwitters wasn't allowed into the Dadaists, he was seen as too bourgeois, so he just created his own Dada and called it Merz. We're too young to have been in Dada, so we've created our own Dada for the 21st century. And but it's more than Dada, it's expressionism.
Absolutely.
It's everything we like. And
I mean, there's rhythmic sound, there's all sorts of things. It's not just visual or writing, or it's all things that influence you or you want to express, or you know, you feel.
There's also references back to like symbolism.
No, definitely, yeah. Well, I mean, we're actually like quite big on symbolism just now because we're doing another project, which is basically trying to do an interdisciplinary translation of a Stefan Mallarmé poem. And it was his last poem, Un coup de deux, which translates as one throw of the dice. One throw of the dice never can abolish chance. And what he did with that poem, which was written about probably 18 something, the late 1800s, was kind of a precursor to a lot of typography, a lot of experiments in how poetry looks on the page, the amount of space that's around poetry. And it is very visual, although he was like completely immersed in the written word. He obviously had real ideas of how you visually represent poetry. And so that ties very much in with us as visual artists as well as written artists. So that project, which has been commissioned by a project kind of based in Glasgow University called Imprints of the New Modernist Editing. And what we're hoping to do is we're always pushing more and more to try and create the kind of total artwork, which, you know, mixes everything that we love. You know, we're very greedy to have art and writing and music and everything mixed together. And we knew a lot about the symbolists, we knew about Baudelaire and Rimbaud, but we'd never really paid much attention to Mallarmé. From the outside, he seemed quite a boring kind of character. He wasn't like shooting his lover. He wasn't like sort of running off to like sell merchandise in Africa. He wasn't dying young particularly. He was just living at home with his wife and his kids and smoking too much and gathering lots of people around him, much like Exploding Appendix, in his Tuesday salons, which basically he very, like you've been talking about, A Quiet Revolution, his kind of quiet conversations ended up exploding across the century, and in a way, like really leading to modernism in a lot of ways. The kind of links that he made with musicians such as Debussy and artists and anyway, I've rather done. Yeah. Over to you. Can't remember if I answered your question there, Bradley. Sorry.
I don't know, what was my question anyway?
You recognise some symbolism.
Yeah, well, I also love the blurring of the line between fiction and reality in that piece. I thought that was really playful. The whole piece was just really playful, and the way that it was like presented. So we talk about how the poetry was presented on the page, or how a manifest page. That really came through. I thought it was just such a brilliant document. It was like a document.
You gave us the kind of kick up the arse to create what we've always wanted to create in a way, and we've called it issue 1 so that it kind of took a bit of pressure off it. It was like, well, this is what we're presenting for Revolution Art Manifesto, but it's not the end of the story. And
if you planned more issues,
quite a lot of issue 2 kind of there, just waiting for us to revisit it and maybe get other collaborators involved.
Was any of this piece organised before you saw the dossier released, or was it something that you thought, oh, this actually we can put quite a lot of energy in creating something?
Quite a lot of the pieces had already been worked on in different kind of drafts over the years, and a lot of the artwork has come from different sources, but basically from us or from Sarah Jane. And I don't want really to like a bit of a spoiler, but 2 of the contributors are actually fictional, and it's all us. So, so we've kind of tried to go back through our back catalogue of visual artwork and kind of pick pieces that were maybe like, sort of, that one's by that person and that one's by this person.
And again, just that playful thing of having other characters involved or other people.
Yeah, we've always seen experimentation as very much playful and enjoyable. We've been to some experimental festivals and loved a lot of it, but we've sort of seen films and sort of thought it doesn't need to be as hard work as this. It doesn't need to be as kind of painful. I mean, there's nothing wrong with art being painful, and there's nothing wrong with art. There's nothing wrong with art being boring. There's nothing wrong with art being whatever it has to be to convey the ideas and the emotions that the artist wants to convey. But I think the general public thinks experimentation is kind of at worst scary, or at least boring or hard work. And it really doesn't have to be that. I mean,
or a niche thing where you only have to be involved in the arts in some sort of way to appreciate it or understand it or even be involved.
Any little kid understands experimentation.
Absolutely.
That's the feeling that we still carry when we create art. Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear Frozen in the background, but my child's monitors playing Frozen in his bedroom. It's on a loop. I might have to just run up and switch it off.
While you were mentioning this idea of yours, I mean, your opinion regarding how art can be or what it can be or what it cannot. It's up in my mind a saying of a radio speaker from US. He was called Ken Nordin.
Say the name again, sorry.
His name was Ken Nordin.
Oh, word jazz. Oh, that's total synchronicity. I was watching a program about Tom Waits' influences, and Ken Nordin came up as one of an influence on Tom Waits. And it was talking about word jazz. Yeah, I know who you mean now. Yeah.
Well, I know him, I think, from other projects. But he used to say something which I found quite true and quite beautiful, which is, if you persist with your foolishness, you will achieve wisdom.
It's almost like Taoism or Zen or something, isn't it?
I don't know. I think it's quite similar to what you are trying to say when you say that, you play around with things and eventually, carry on with this approach, you will get to a point which it didn't exist before. So,
I think people think that play is flimsy and kind of superficial, but play can be really serious, and we learn through play. We become humans in society through playing, and we shouldn't lose the ability to play, and experimentation is the best way of playing.
And even if those emotions are deep and, like you were touching on before, personal to you, there's still no reason why you can't play with them yourself. Mill around the ideas that you have about what's personally making you feel these ways about the work you want to produce, or emotions are, because emotions are really things we tend to keep into ourselves and hide away. And I think with art, you have the opportunity to bring those things out and, reveal to yourself, if not anyone else, more about how you feel about your journey or your emotions or personal things to you. So I think, you're right. It still connects to very personal things inside you. It's not all just games and fun and play. It's like, there's a serious aspect to it as well. You're saying, So.
Play is the way how we move around. It's not necessary. I guess, it's also important what are the rules of the game. So everyone makes their own. And regarding, the thing of expression you're feeling, is because then we realize that, we are human. And making art is a way to remember that the importance and the need of be connected as humans.
I think when you create art, whether it's through play or improvisation, or even if you take a scholarly approach and kind of conceptually think things through and then create, you are one maybe reason for art is to find out who you are, like put a mirror before yourself, almost surprise yourself with who you are, that you create a piece of art and you discover in that moment, well, that's who I am. And I didn't even realize that that's come from within me.
And as you get older, how these feelings change as well.
You're always a different person with each artwork you make.
Absolutely. It's a discovery, isn't it? Definitely.
I think that something which more of a comment than a question. For me personally, the reason why I enjoy philosophy as a subject is because you start off, sometimes the deception is even the words in which you are committed to.
Yeah.
So when you say something, the danger is you're saying something because you're not aware of what is behind those words. And I think that something that is very admirable about all three of you is that it's art is a way of finding out what are those motivating, in fact, what's moving you towards something. And there's a real honesty in that.
Yeah, I think words, in one way, the beauty of words is they're so flawed. You're really scrambling in the dark when you use words to try and express anything. I mean, they're just symbols. I mean, you're sort of slightly surprised when you suddenly remember that the word zebra, which when you think about it is quite a weird word, the sound of it, is just somehow has become the symbol that represents this creature that looks a certain way. Can't remember quite what I was going to say there, but I've got caught in zebras. But words, I think poetry exists because words are so inadequate that you kind of have to combine them in certain ways and try and trigger correspondences in the mind of yourself and other people. And art does that as well. It's not just words that are inadequate. I mean, maybe all kind of symbols of how you try and express yourself are limited because human emotion and human experience is so, it's like a chromatic scale, and maybe words maybe just show you the kind of like the major scale within that, or even less than that.
And yet we were watching Patti Smith today,
reading
some amazing poetry.
Which was improvised a
lot. It was amazing.
Well, words are beautiful. Words are amazing. I mean, I'm not knocking words. I'm not having a go at words. I love words, but they are inadequate tools. They're the best tools we have. We're basically...
I think there was a brilliant interview with a musician I really like, and he was talking about, so he had a tracheotomy when he was younger. So they stuck a tube down his throat when he was about 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And he didn't realise that all of these images about necks, and he uses quite aggressive imagery about slitting throats and blah, blah, blah. And he said that it was only a couple of years ago, after he'd been writing for 10 years, that he came to the realisation that there was this link. And I think that when you do improvised poetry, and there are certain themes that emerge and emerge again, and that offers you an opportunity to go, okay, what's going on here? And I can imagine it's the same with drawing a picture.
It's really interesting because our son is non-verbal. He has autism, so he doesn't speak, but he makes a lot of sounds, That still blows my mind as to the fact he doesn't use a language that we use.
We still, he has his own sort of speech and language, and we still don't know whether to him, those sounds mean something, or whether he's just enjoying the sensation in his mouth and the sound of them in the air. Kind of thing.
Although there is certain ones that, well, obviously, I mean, he's 15 this year.
And he does understand some words.
So we do understand, when he is trying to communicate with us for particular needs, obviously, and we have particular patterns of sound that he makes. But he's a beautiful singer. I mean, there's no words, but the melodies are beautiful. He's got such a lovely voice.
Yeah, words are even...
So to us, even the barrier's not there with our child.
I mean, our love of Dada also ties in with the whole idea of just the sound of words without meaning being beautiful, like Hugo Ball's presented at Cabaret Voltaire. And just the sound of... I mean, we do music, and Sergine's a singer, and quite often we've done quite a few pieces where it's just Sergine's voice without actual words with meaning, but there's so much meaning just in the sound of a voice. Well, I mean, there's so much meaning in music or any kind of abstract art, in visual art.
We did an improvisation.
A voice carries like all these. Have you seen the film Arrival? We watched it again the other day. The science fiction movie. The guy that directed the new Blade Runner directed it. A Canadian, but it's a woman who's a linguist, and she's been brought in by the American army to try and translate with these. They look kind of like octopuses. They're aliens, but they have like 7 like limbs, and they communicate in a way that is non-linear, where they kind of squirt visual images into the air that all arrive in one go. So it's not like reading left to right and starting here and going to there. It's like in one go, holding all this information. And the way the human voice does that, even without meaning attached to the sounds coming out. There's so much meaning in the timbre and the tone.
But I
and
remember
the
doing that
pitch
one
and-
where we did a piece called "Things Fall Apart, the Centre Cannot Hold," and it was just how long was it? Maybe 20 minutes or something.
25 minutes.
25 minutes, and it was just
Improvised.
my voice, and I was improvising and just going through. And by the end of it, we actually cut it off the video because it was a selection of us playing different instruments, and they all came up in different squares on the screen. But by the end of it, there's a little bit of me at the end just going. That was something, because it was just emotionally such a journey just to make those sounds, just to, and not go looking for the sounds, just let them naturally come.
And it was a true kind of improvisation, like a jazz musician playing the
I thought you were going to
instrument.
cry actually at one point. What's she going through here? But it was like a real
It's
process.
pure communication, and our son communicates purely, and he, for whatever blocks are in place that won't allow him to learn language the way that most people know it, he still is able to fully at least try to communicate with all these sounds and movements.
I mean, I'm amazed sometimes how he picks up our emotions so well as well. He completely can feel, he still feels everything, which is, incredible to watch, to have all that feeling that we all have and not be able to express it in a way that, but maybe his is even better. I don't know. Maybe his way of expressing is just what he wants. That's how he wants to do it. I don't know.
I've never been totally blown away by Mark Rothko, but Sarah Jane loves Rothko, and you would say that just those particular colours applied to the canvas in that thickness, that way,
and the way it
expresses a whole range of emotion. I'm not against abstract art or anything like that. I'm just saying that it's not as much my thing.
No, but like I say, every day in our life, it's just nothing seems average or normal or linear or so it's not new to us really. Yeah. So that's how we make our work, that's how our art evolves as well,
So we live Dada every day.
But we just,
well, I think as well, like your kid must be very blessed in a lot of ways to have parents that are constantly exploring ways of expressing things, but which
that poor
are
kid's been dragged along to so many installations and sound. And it's amazing because some music you'll put on and he's like, almost get that off, and then you can see he really has a strong reaction to certain voices, and not that he has he's not frightened of everyday noise. He's quite fine with that. But particular, he loves Tom Waits. He loves the percussion. He loves jazz. He loves Captain Beefheart. He likes really unstructured things, and anything too structured. He's not a really pop fan.
He does that.
We don't play much pop.
He does love, I suppose, like classical sort of sounds.
He loves classical music, but then again, he loves Frozen. So, he doesn't love Frozen.
even understanding that there's something hegemonic about words, and there's something hegemonic even about art, about the way that we do things, and trying to seek expression outside of that. We're all trying to reach pure communication, and none of us achieve it.
Yeah.
And exploring other ways of doing that is a very healthy thing, especially for a child that doesn't express themselves in the way which is the hegemonic approach to it.
Yeah.
So that's all I was saying. I was just saying that I think that it's quite a lovely thing.
I think that might be at the root of why we kind of want to break down the barriers and use every art form in order to express ourselves. Like we want to, we've kind of spent years creating films here, creating music there, creating writing there, creating art there, but we really want to be able to merge, at least occasionally, create forms that have all of these elements, because it surely must be a wider form of communication than having them separated, it would seem.
And yet there's lots of people who want to put things into boxes, and we've had many people say, no, you'll have to change your name for the music part of you, and you'll have to change your name for the film part of you, because people are just not going to understand. And I think that's true to a degree. There's we maybe do something musical and people go, do they do music as well? And it's like, well, yeah, but you could do that too if you want. It's not as if it's not as if there's a law or a rule or a line that says you can't.
It's a new century, so why do we have to just compliantly just sit in those boxes that have been sitting there for centuries, or at least since the 20th century? It's the 21st century. We can break down all those barriers and create new art that doesn't exist yet, new forms of art, mix everything up much more.
What you said about words, feelings are chromatic. Words function on a major scale.
Yeah.
Good. I study Nietzsche, and Nietzsche says something similar. I reckon you said it better.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the idea that words only capture like the extremes of an emotion.
Mm.
You don't get that fine-grained subtleties of human experience.
Yeah, our latest, we were talking about the Stefan Mallarmé trying to translate him, and it's so hard to translate. I mean, it's so hard for us to translate our son's emotions and what he might be trying to communicate, but even trying to translate a poem from French into English, where in French, they've got a long tradition of having 12 syllable. It's like kind of the French poetry, rather than being like English poetry is like da-da, da-da, it's like stress-based. French poetry is more monotone, but it's like based on syllables. So it's like 12 syllables in the line, called an Alexandrine. So a lot is captured in that French poem. How do you translate that then into the English language? How do you translate all these nuances of meaning that are, even one word can have so many double entendres or just so many meanings to it. And Stefan Mallarmé is particularly difficult, and especially his last poem. So it's like we're trying to do something that's almost impossible, and that challenge is quite exciting. It's like feels quite creative. So the way we're approaching it is to try and make it interdisciplinary, like have it as much about us creating music or film or visual artwork as it is about literally translating the words. We're doing that as well, but we want to find other routes into his poem for people that aren't born in the 1800s in France.
But not only that, I was thinking as well, sort of the fact that we've chosen to work in film also with old film stock that's out of date, that can't be processed in a lab now. So we're hand processing it ourselves at home, you know, it gives a different atmosphere, a different feeling to the work. You know, it's got another, some of the work looks kind of otherworldly, you know, because it's so grainy and dreamlike, and that's another process all in itself, you know, just hand processing film. But again, it's something we totally enjoy doing, and we just like experimenting with everything.
We don't get enough time to do it.
No, that's the only issue is time. Yeah, we never have enough time.
And what's your
Bradley posed a series of interview questions to us, I think possibly about 2 years ago, and we're nearly finished them, but not quite yet, because time really isn't our friend.
Yeah, well, it's totally fine. I think that these are ongoing questions anyway, so it's like the Exploding Appendix questionnaire, which is...
Well, that's the thing. If your answer keeps updating, you just constantly review your answer.
Yeah, we'll have to rewrite it anyway.
And what's your answer to the translation issue? What's your approach? What are you going to prioritize?
Oh, sorry, I've not read any of this. We're working as a team. So Sarah Jane is at the moment looking at the visual side of things, and I'm at the moment reading as much as I can about Stefan Mallarmé and, you know, approaches to that particular poem and symbolism in general. I mean, basically what happened was, this should have happened last year. His whole poem is kind of about chance, and it was going to be exhibited in Yorkshire in July, and then chance kind of rattled the dice and threw COVID at us. So it's been postponed to later this year, which in a way has changed the project, because it's given us a year to look at this work rather than a few months.
And visually that's helped me a lot, because I'm looking at redacted pieces of work, like, you know, making it the words actually visual and not words anymore, and looking at that on a page, you know, what that looks like. So
the way Stefan Mallarmé laid out these pages was to kind of flow across the page and have a lot of space around them.
So I've counted all the words.
But then you have to work out, do you want to look at that line there as one block, or do you want to look at it as individual words? So that's what Sergio means about a redacted version, is just all those particular words. One block.
But visually, I mean, I don't want to just use a black block to represent that. So obviously visually I'm trying to look at other things that will work with the poem, that will, you know, interlink with what this language should look like visually, you know. So it's it's hard.
We're still in the kind of research phase at the moment.
There's a lot to research, there's a lot to think about. So, but it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, we were even just talking about it today, about how we display it as well, you know.
Yeah.
It's going to be
The lady who's running that project, she's called Dr. Bryony, and I can't remember her last name, but we give her a link to Ubroy and also to the dossier, and she absolutely loves all of it. So I think she put up a link on her
Can we send her copies?
Twitter to promote this project. So it's valid work.
Thanks so much as well for your answers. Polly, you waited so patiently for your turn.
Hello, you're right. How's it going?
I
mean, so I just sort of like random. I'm trying to remember actually where I saw like the call out thing, but I saw it somewhere online. But I'd just come back from Prague. I was studying sculpture in Prague. One of the things I was involved with there was like this sort of like salon, you know what I mean? Meeting up and producing this magazine and stuff. And then obviously it was all lockdown. And I came back, and this was one of the first things I kind of seen, and it just seemed like up my street, I suppose. You know, the whole sort of manifesto thing is kind of like my bag. And it's funny because, you know, it's quite a diverse mix of like stuff that's been contributed, but like everybody's said something that's kind of resonated with me. And I think what you guys were saying, there's quite a lot of things that I feel quite close to my heart about. These are our tools, you know what I mean? They're all, I think for me, the thing that Lucy was saying earlier about the writing, I mean, for me, I just see that as an inherent part of my work. So yeah, manifesto is kind of like, it ticks those boxes. I like the immediacy of it, you know, it's unmediated, you know, which is why I think a lot of the speak to me the most is often poetry more than visual art. There's something quite unmediated about it, and especially, you know, I grew up with like monsters poetry and really dark art and stuff, so it's like I quite like that. It doesn't need to explain itself or be sensible or be within some sort of thing that makes it's justified or whatever, it just is. And I quite like that. So, and I just want to say, like, I'm such a, like an impressive project, like it really is cool, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to come along more. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about isolation earlier, but I've like lived like a complete hermit for years in a field on my own with no phone signal or anything, and I'm not really used to like being in contact with real humans on there. Well, I'm doing this from my phone, so I'm quite impressed that the internet's worked, because our internet went earlier. So I don't know what I am as an artist at the moment, because it keeps changing, because it's like, oh, I was doing this, now I can't do that, it's lockdown, so now I'm doing virtual stuff. I mean, for me, it was always very much about making. Physically making was always just part of my existence. I built my own house out of a lorry, like, you know, I make my things because that's how you have things. If you make a slip disc in my neck, so I can't use my arm at the moment, so it's like, right, what do you do if you're not making? So, and then you start to realise quite how much the ideas are the things that kind of holds it all together. This sort of thing is quite like interesting. I need it to have the ideas as well as what holds it all together, and everything else falls apart, I suppose, you know.
Did you say in your was it in your piece that you contributed where you say about how you don't want to be self-reliant?
Yeah, what about being?
I mean, you do want to be self-reliant.
Yeah, it's been questioned before, like, oh, why? You know, it's totally valid to work in a crew, and I'm not saying don't want to, but it's also out of that necessity of having been, you know, if you want to do something and you learn how to do all the bits of it, that you could do it, and that's, you know, trying to keep it so that you always have those tools. In a way, it is about being able to make stuff. I mean, I think that was for me the hardest question I've ever been asked in my life, is what does it mean to be a multimedia artist? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, like, what does it mean? Because I mean, how is that any different from when I was a lorry driver? You know, it comes out one way or another. I mean, I wrote most of my poetry when I was lorry driving, because I mean, I see art as it's about a right to self-authorship, you know what I mean? And that can take whatever form, but for me that exists. It's not just in art, you know, it's in anything we do where we say, no, actually I'm going to do it like this. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I suppose that's what I mean with that, is having that independence to always have that voice with whatever space or means you have. And at the moment I'm like, what is that? I haven't got my arms and I'm good. So yeah, I don't know, I'm questioning it. Like,
I'm just trying to refresh my memory. That is the piece, the interview.
Yeah.
With Polita Madrid. Yeah, okay.
My manifesto, because I saw the call out, the manifesto, I was like, oh, I've got a manifesto. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, I just loved what you guys, I mean, I loved the writing. I can't even remember what it was, but there were certain bits in the writing that really oh, yes, I like this. This is, yeah, just wicked. So, but initially I'd written this manifesto because, I mean, I don't know, I think most of the stuff that I sort of get pissed off about something or other, manifestos fit that kind of like, well, that's pissed me off, I'm going to go and write a manifesto. So for me, I was like, yeah, so I submitted that, and then there was, you know, the questions, which I really was like kind of impressed with the questions, because they made me, you know, I think they were really, really interesting questions in themselves. Like, to actually think about those things in your own works quite like.
So you sent us your manifesto, and then it was a really brilliant manifesto, and then but we also looked at your website and thought this is really just generally really great stuff, and so we were like, how do we I think we should do more than simply just put the manifesto in, and so in the end we sort of sent you those questions, but which actually sort of brought out, because it seems like some of your other videos and stuff seem like manifestos as well, so it was like sort of really fits. I think it's one of the pieces which really has quite a strong political element and in relation to the sort of manifesto, and it's also got the manifesto as a kind of art form, and then there's just a very sort of strong experimenting with art itself, and I think that all of that sort of came together with your work, and it sort of really it seemed to fit in that regard really.
Yeah, I mean what was written that I read felt to me like, oh yeah, I like this, you know what I mean? I do kind of, one of the things that was interesting in the questions as well was about that, how is your artwork political or whatever, and that for me is like a really, really interesting subject, and it's something that I'm doing a lot of thinking and writing about and stuff, because actually that there is something in a manifesto which is also, it's not a sort of like a telling of this is what we should do, it's a saying, do this, there's something quite like call to arms about it, which I think is, for me, that gives a bit of space for fun and play. This is something you said as well, which is really, really, really vital. And I think that it gets overlooked a lot. Actually, a lot of the sort of like art that I grew up with or whatever, the very dark art is very playful, and it like really kind of grim, and but that's got a lot of punch to it, and so that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in. And obviously that was in Prague, that was quite the stuff we were working with, grotesque and like all stuff like that's really interesting. And I'm like I say, like all the stuff that you've managed to sort of like get together on the website is really, really impressive. It's such a like really cool resource as well, like, so well done. I'm so glad I sort of came across it. I was like, wow.
I have a question which is kind of tailored at all of the people that either wrote something in a manifesto form. So I think it goes for you, Polly, as well as Sarah Jane, and as well this goes to you, Bradley, a little bit, because I struggle with the manifesto form, and that's what I was trying to confront in my piece, because in some sense the manifesto as a call to arms in some way is, as well as being playful, there's something serious in saying that what I am saying has valuable connotations that needs to be spoken as authority. So why is the manifesto form such an important thing? I think that the playfulness is something that I haven't really taken into account, and I need to sort of think about myself. So in my piece, I was trying to wrestle with the futility and the kind of lostness of what it means to be a person in this modern 21st century where everything is corporatized, the individual is kind of lost within things. And then that being combined with something as authoritative as a manifesto is interesting, and something that I would, before I knew Bradley, would be something that I was a bit skeptical of.
I think it's interesting you say that, because I think that's one of the things that is interesting about it, as playing with it as well, like, and also the idea of the futility of it all. Or do I think that I'm going to make a difference with my artwork? No. Do I think I'm going to do any better without making it? No. So it's like, and it's enjoying that and saying, well, fuck it, it's not going to do, I'm probably better off going and putting brick through some window somewhere, but why not do both, And here's a brick, I've attached a poem to it, so it's legitimate, you can go out as well, like, you know what I mean? So, and I just think that's sort of fun, is these, especially if it's serious concerns that you're dealing with, especially because how else do we survive it, I suppose.
Yeah. Bradley, what are your thoughts? Because you always elusively sit at the back and just sort of pull the strings, and yet you have no concrete beliefs in things. But I want to.
No, I think that I think it is partly the playfulness, but also there's something. Manifestos aren't really passive aggressive. If anything, they're aggressive. They're just not passive aggressive. But I like passive aggression. Yeah, I think it's quite good to be upfront about stuff at some points and just like say it, and then still play with the saying of it as well. But it's just nice to just throw things out there sometimes and say, let's do this. And also it's good for actually exploring political ideas, or not just political ideas, but like more generally like things that would require some kind of call to arms. So if you want to explore those kind of things, it's a very playful way to explore those kind of things, especially if you're sending up the genre. Because originally, assumably, really, the original thing is it's really coming from sort of like political manifestos, but you're adapting it to art. And so there's this kind of, there's something quite fun in that, I think. And it's quite a unique genre in that respect. It's something that has this sort of there's different levels to it, I guess.
But so is it something that you all three cameras think is sort of like an ironic practice to some extent? Is it always tied in with irony now in a way that it wasn't 250 years ago when Marx was writing the Communist Manifesto?
I think an art manifesto can be something quite different to a political manifesto, because there's an idea that an art manifesto should be doing what a political manifesto is doing, which is basically saying, this is the way I see the world, and if you follow this set of rules, then life will be better. But an art manifesto might be just sort of putting words there that the writer doesn't necessarily actually believe to be the ultimate truth of life. It's more a kind of trying to get a reaction out of the person. So, and you know, like the movement Situationists International, and they had this one slogan, be reasonable, demand the impossible. So what does that mean? It's a trigger to just activate something in the other person that's non-specific. So it's not saying workers of the world unite and take over. It's saying do something, just sort of.
There's an urgency.
Your synapses should explode and something should come out of it. And it shouldn't be tied to the original manifesto's idea necessarily, but it's more a kind of like,
feel that urgency.
There's an explosion, what are you going to do with it? Kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think, I think that's actually a really interesting point as well, because this sort of like, workers of the world or whatever, it's like, I don't want to be defined, you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't want to be the humble worker in my factory as a, you know what I mean? And as someone who's spent years as a lorry driver, I can tell you I don't want someone telling me that that's, no, I don't want that. And that's why that's actually much more inspirational to say, well, go, this doesn't make any sense because there is, we can't make sense for you. It's just go and do it. Like whatever it is, just go and do it. And that to me is much more, that is more revolutionary, I think. And I think that's one of the things is seeing the joy in these things. You know what I mean? That there is joy in these things, and I'm obviously it's not all carnival and whatever, but there can be joy in it in difficult stuff and hard times, because that is how we survive.
Also, in relation to workers in the world unite, I mean, Marx, I think, was originally going to be a poet, and so there is there's an element of poetry in some of his work, and it's
it's a great line.
Yeah, and so there is this kind of there is a poetry going on in that manifesto as well, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a better read manifesto if you read it with irony, as if it's read with, do you know what I mean? Like,
well, there's also that kind of there's a sort of celebration of capitalism in there as well. Like it's kind of got these different dimensions going on that are kind of interesting.
So Marx was a political economist, really, and a lot of political economy, like the best political economists, whose names I can't remember, they were all poetic. They're all famous for being poetic. It was a different discipline. Capitalism was new then, and the kinds of people who were attracted to trying to describe it, the kinds of people who are economists today, very different people.
Poetry is a way of helping to persuade people, like in adverts where they used to use alliteration, like poetic techniques to basically sell, like a donut or whatever. I suppose Marx understood that poetry and writing, good quality writing, was going to get his ideas across better than just, like boring, bold facts. Just
it would influence.
Yeah.
And all politics is like that. I mean, politics is based on persuasion, and it's based on charisma, and how are you going to convince as many people as possible that what you're saying is the way forward. So art and poetry can be coerced into putting across messages. The good thing about art manifestos is sometimes it's quite good to put all of that energy into putting across no message.
Yeah, but also your piece doesn't describe no message. The concluding remarks are something which I don't think that our world has taken much thought over, which I think is displayed as a call to arms, as sort of a modernist rejection of being able to understand the world. That's the kind of rejection that a lot of these art manifestos have said to me. So I think that it's not just it's more like in this world of fragmentation and confusion, where there is so much power in political and economic structures, how is art coming out with a manifesto? So this is kind of what makes it a little bit of an ironic play in some ways for me.
It seems that there is quite an interest in approaching to what we do in a playful way. I want to try to make a distinction more for understanding better your idea and relate to my way of seeing. So I believe the playfulness is the method to do something, but it's not necessarily the end.
Yeah, it could be research.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it can be a loose research.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have like an initial, I mean, is this a loose research which use the way of playing in order to finding something that wasn't there before based on something initially, or not at all? All of you that it seems that, you know, you embrace quite a lot of this aspect in your activity, in your exercise, in your practice. So there is an initial, it's just like for the sake of investigation.
Yeah, it's discovery. I think playfulness leads you to discovery and discovering things that maybe you couldn't see before or have changed, like you say, it through the process of making art or whatever it is you're making.
Yeah.
So playfulness is maybe, you know, not necessarily the be all and end all of it. It's the part of, it's an approach to it.
It's like you said earlier about using intuition, and you could be like Jack Kerouac, who claimed to just purely let it all spray out across the page, all sellotape together, you know, like, oh, there you are, there's my novel, I've written it in 2 days or whatever. But really, he was probably going in and editing bits of it.
Yeah.
So you're using a different bit of your brain, aren't you? So you're using intuition, and then you're later on using a different kind of critical part of your editing. You play, and then what you've created, you then mold or sculpt, into a finished piece. You know, you're using different processes and different parts of yourself.
Yeah, see, it's sort of expressing it as playful, is not saying that it's weak in any way, or sort of just that's the only process, you know, part of the process. It is just a part of the process, approaching it in that manner.
I don't know, because it seems that it's not part of the project. By the way you are describing, is the whole aspect. In my regards, when I was talking about the intuition, anyway, is associated with something that I wish to communicate. If I don't say wrong, the approach instead you use is separated by any initial. There is not really anything. I mean, something you wanted to communicate, rather than, you know, experimenting in order to find out something that at the moment we are not aware of.
Yeah. So. Once you discover that, what do you do with it? Is that you just present that to the world as that discovery, or do you then want to remold it and do you work on it some more? And
then that discovery, are you just discovering something about yourself as an artist in the process of what you've discovered? Is it just about you, or is it something you're going to take forward in the work? There's lots of reasons why you're going through a piece of work. It's not just to have a final piece. Sometimes it is just realizing that you got caught up in this, I don't know, intuition or whatever it is you wanted to that you know what I'm saying?
Try to, from what you are saying, I see two things that they are somehow a limit. Either is a continuous work in progress, and if it's so, it's because we got to a point where we enjoy the process, but we feel there is something that has still to be investigated. Perhaps it can be the process. Perhaps it can be like the idea that needs to grow.
Yeah, you get conceptual art, which is just basically, not just basically, but, people are more interested in, the process of it than they are creating a piece at the end. I personally like to create a piece at the end. I like to go through the process right through to having a finished piece like yourself. I like to have something to show for the journey that I've gone through, But some people, artists, don't want to do that. They want the process to be the work, and the research or the investigation or whatever, it is, So I'm like you, though. I personally like to have a piece of work at the end of it. I like to have something to say, this is where I've arrived at,
No, actually, I think it's completely a good thing if we don't feel ready to come up with a finished piece. Definitely. Ultimately, I think we all agree that at some point, the work we produce is meant for an audience.
Yeah. And there's also this long life kind of thing. I don't know, personally for me as an artist, where things roll onto other things, and influence other things, and it seems like just a lifelong work you're doing. You know, everything seems to be influencing each other all of the time. You're never really left with a void. You know, there's always something. Oh, you know, that really relates to this I was thinking, or which heads you down another avenue or whatever. You know, so it's a continuous.
I suppose if you're creating in performance in front of an audience, then that is play, and you're only editing in the moment, like editing in camera in a way, like Patti Smith standing on stage, just letting the words flow out, and the finished piece is where those just spur of the moment thoughts and phrases hit the audience, and the audience kind of suck it in, which is a very different kind of way of creating than sitting in your studio playing and then sculpting away at it and editing away at it. It's still, they're still both valid artworks that are created, but the immediacy of performance has created maybe a kind of artwork that's more closely related to intuition, whereas the one created in the studio has intuition in it, but it's also got time and sort of, you know, like a bit of kind of scratching your chin, thinking about what am I going to do with this.
I don't know about you, but I always think, when I think of performance, I always think of Anna Mendieta and her work, you know.
It's David. Where is he? I can't see him. We've just had a cross-cultural cross between Exploding Appendix and Exploding Cinema with the introduction of David V there.
Wow.
He's gone again.
Wow. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Did you just type in exploding? Was it like?
I don't know. I got no light, so you're going to be like in the dark big time. Try this through. Never mind. I've been to Cinema Appendix to this group like a couple of times. They usually very highbrow conversations, so I'm pretty very short of conversation usually. I come back because I just saw a post of you, one of your posts saying that you were there tonight. I just Exploding Cinema has been is celebrating 30 years anniversary this year, and basically we are open access. So basically we do not curate show. Filmmakers send us their film, we put them on the program and we show them. There is very, very few exceptions where basically the film couldn't be shown or was like pulled very, very late. Is a collective of filmmakers organizing screenings of short films. The only rule we got is basically the film have to be less than 20 minutes. So basically that brings us a lot of different things and a lot of weird and beautiful, some very long stuff where basically you bore the audience and you lose half of the audience because basically the film is too long or something. And basically, I don't know. Basically, I saw shows where basically the audience arrive for one film and leave after their film, but that's quite very rare. And basically, usually we got quite a nice crowd. And I was speaking about like the censure, where basically we are open access. And basically earlier on, we were speaking on this platform called Platform 7. And basically they were saying that basically we had these films who was like pro-arms, anti-avortment guy who basically made this horrible piece where basically he was showing weapons and dead fetus. So we had these very, very long conversations about what we should do about it. And basically the guy excluded himself because of his behaviors, really. Because basically we did show his films. He wasn't happy that it was the last film of the show. He wasn't happy with anybody in the collective. He started being very rude to some of the members. So basically he got himself into very, very hot water. You're more than welcome if you want to send your films. The last one from Sarah James was just very, very nice. It was like an 8mm films where she patiently like curve every single little piece of Atlantic out of it. And I think replace it with like some kind of ink. So it was very colorful. That's the artistic end of like the 8mm films. I don't think I saw to some extent, some scratching as much as this films. I don't know.
Have you got a link? Have you got a link to some of the films that you've shown?
But I don't know. Exploding Cinema's got a YouTube channel. So basically, when you go on the YouTube, you go to Exploding Cinema, and basically there is at least the last 10 shows we did online. So basically, you got like a good 20 hours, at least 20 hours of films there. You're more than welcome to tell them. There is a submission page on the website. with explodingcinema.org, and you can submit through the website.
It's a wonderful thing to do, isn't it? Exploding cinema. It's a great thing to get involved in if you are a filmmaker.
But maybe a lot of the dossier could be translated into film form. Be reborn in exploding cinema.
No, but see, Appendix Cinema is something else. Appendix Cinema, I went to a couple of your events, and I think it was the gentleman who I can see now on the main stage, who basically was like showing some painting and asking how perversions, how pervert was like the art, and basically we had to start describing it. So basically, it's funny because I'm still thinking about it. Though some of your events, I'm still thinking of the event, and basically, I think art is made to be perversive. Somehow, definitely. At some point, art can be decorative and everything, and basically you make big monument in memories of this person or this situation and everything. But also, art is made to be perversive in order to basically open the eyes of people. Or art have to be sarcastic because basically there is a way where basically you have to communicate. Art have to be subversive. It's not subversive, but yeah, somehow art is useful. I'm the first client from it, so somehow like that. Something like that. I grew up in Paris, so basically art was present, and I was basically being able to go to museum and stuff like that. I'm not very cultivated, like reading stuff and stuff like that, but I do like my art galleries, and I do like my flashy thing in my face and stuff like that. So, and basically I'm really grateful to it, really, because I do get, I don't know, in the last 10 years, I've been trying to get involved with like digital art and stuff like that. And it's very fun. It's still in like the making. But basically there is this whole interaction thing that I find very interesting. If you can get something out of it, all the avatar things, I don't know, from basically the last exhibition I saw online was like Art in Flux. And they had like they organized workshop where basically Black trans women will basically learn to design avatars. So basically, they were like displaying the way they want to look on the virtual world. And I find the idea of avatar pretty interesting at some point. And basically, either being able to create yourself, or somehow create the image you want to create of yourself, rather than basically being judged. And basically, that's it. You make it as weird as possible in order to be judged as weirdly as possible. But you get judged of an effigy, you're not getting judged of where you're from or what your parents are from and stuff like that. So basically you get judged on an artistic point of view and not on a physical point of view. I'm really interested. There is this other very, very, very nice Jason Wheeler, who is basically like a disabled artist. And he's been like doing some avatar again. But basically those ones are with the theme of disability. And this is just gorgeous because he used a lot of colors. And he make his like characters like cartoon like, but he make them either as sculptures, inflatable sculptures or sculptures, and he make them on big scales like 4, 5, 6 meters long, large. And he create he got some funding with like the pandemic, and he create a virtual world around them. So basically he create a virtual world where basically he managed to have a virtual cinema. So basically it's like a sitting area, but I guess he gets some help. So he gets some other artists to work with and so that. But basically, I don't know. He's using so much vivid colors. They are so basically I would say childish theme. But basically, he does work very, very nicely. He's a guy from Leicester, and he was like meant to be at the Tate during the pandemic. So basically, that's been postponed. But basically, he's doing monumental work, and he takes his monumental work into digital world, which is very.
Is he creating a virtual world that he can live in that he can't quite live in sort of in the real world because of his disability?
I don't know if I find the stuff is basically so he's an art gallery, but he's the only one on our virtual art gallery where basically it's not a static art gallery where basically you just walk around. There is like things happening on the walls, and basically all the walls are inhabited with art. And it's not like a virtual world where you can live into it because basically he's a wheelchair bound. So in the real world he's wheelchair bound, and basically most of his avatars have either missing legs or like so they got like something with their eyes or something with like big ears and stuff like that, or like basically it would be like an amplified disability with amplified, but made into a funny cartoonish look. And I don't know, it's not too much of living. The stuff is basically, I haven't seen the stage where basically the avatar talk to each other. I would imagine that basically in theory, you could have like the avatar talking to each other, but I saw that in the experimental way with like some university work. But I haven't seen that in Jason Miller. It's Jason Miller. He's got like his 3 vowels name. The stuff is basically, yeah, the academic are doing it a little bit. I think it's Bournemouth University or something, where they had like these exhibitions where basically the avatar could talk to each other. I don't know if I'm making it up or I'm just like a utopia fiction thing.
I'm building a virtual space at the moment, and it's something I wanted to do, but I think it might be really difficult, like physically being able to get like, because I wanted that you'd have that function where people could go into the virtual space, and my virtual space is really weird anyway, but like that there would be that function where they could talk to each other. But I don't know how, like, I think the programming side of it is beyond me at the moment. But yeah, if you do discover someone like doing that.
No, but in fact, the basic stuff is the chat. You can definitely
you can put a chat function, but to speak, to be able to.
The stuff is basically you're still doing it through, now you're doing it in video. So basically, it shouldn't be that very, very hard to go in from the video stages where you use your sound. I don't know if I have to speak smaller, where you use your sound. But basically, you could imagine that basically the picture we are using now, instead of being picture, being like a virtual avatars, and basically it will be the same system, except that basically you don't look the way you are, you look the way you want to look like. Or basically you can have like one of the the latest picture of Sarah Jane. She put like these very nice argentic pictures online. And basically it's just like, yeah, you could have, for instance, have that and basically articulate the mouth or something. Anyway, it's only, you can do whatever. You just have to basically have the aim for it. But basically, yeah, I would go back to the mainstream stuff, like Jean-Michel Jarre. I don't know if you know, but it's like a techno French electronic musician. He had like a virtual concert for French National Day. And basically, it's all very like sweet and mellow and basically, so there is this kind of thing like basically is too sweet. But basically, the whole virtual, he did like a whole, like it was like a concert hall, but a virtual concert hall, where he had all his equipment in the front, and he was playing like mega DJ things in the front, and he had this whole audience made out of avatars. And it's the same, the avatars, they were doing their own move and everything, and so that, and they all had their little tricks and stuff like that. So basically, I guess, basically all that go back to Second Life. The stuff is basically, the technology is there. It's basically, apparently, there is a problem with Hollywood. They find out that basically the mainstream audience do not like the digital look. If I understand recently, I saw a documentary recently where they wanted to replace superstars with like avatars. So basically lookalikes of superheroes who look very humans, but are still digitals. And they put them within like a virtual world and put up like tell a story within the virtual world. And apparently they had a very, very bad response to the audience. The audience didn't like it at all. So now they do the opposite. They do Marvels, where basically it's like human beings actors, but there is so much CGI around it that basically it really looks like the video games in there. Mm-hmm. But you still need the actors, the face of the actors with the mimic of the actors for the audience to engage with it.
There's an interesting Scottish visual artist called Rachel McLean, and she kind of uses a lot of the techniques of maybe games and mainstream cinema, a lot of green screen, but she makes really subversive, creepy films.
They're very dark, yeah.
And maybe we should try and find a link to her.
Yeah,
it's worth checking out because she's sort of using the technology, but she really is creating art from it rather than sort of entertainment.
Yeah. You use a lot of you use lots of media, Polly, don't you, as well?
I've been trying to, because it's funny this come up, this virtual thing, because I'm just at the moment, because I was doing sculpture and I was going to make this installation, and now it's like, oh, where do I do all of this? So now I'm doing ZBrush, animating figures to build a Unity space. And it's all of this stuff that is like, oh my God, to learn all of this. But yeah, again, it's just another tool, isn't it? I was quite sort of reticent about doing computer stuff before, but now I'm getting quite into it. But yeah, ZBrush and 3D Studio Max and all of that to render out very weird, they're kind of avatars, I suppose. I'm making a bar and altar and slot machine arcade thing. So yeah, if it works.
What is it? Say again.
It's the remaking of an installation piece that's gone rogue, basically. It's gone rogue and is now a bar with a slot machine and altar, and it's kind of about like gamification but also like reward and about performativity, but done in a very piss take way, I suppose. But yeah, hopefully I have a functioning game within it, which is the slot machine, but there will be art in it. And I wanted to have all this stuff like, you know, an interactive, like where you could speak to the barmaid and she would be programmed with AI that would just generate art speak, you know, but like real building art speak. So we'll have this bank of like, you say, you know, she'd say, oh, what do you think of the work? And they would say whatever.
You could program
well, yes, I think it speaks about the bleakness of the human condition or whatever, something like that. But actually,
you could program your manifesto into
huh?
You could program your manifesto into it like the barmaid.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, I just like regurgitating stuff at this point. I'm like, oh, I could make this virtual and stick that in there. You know, my manifesto, that'd be great. I suppose in a way she is an avatar. If I could have a goat's head, I probably would choose to. So yeah, she is like to be in the real world. So I'm making her as a goat goddess. So if it were, that will be. At the moment, it's kind of making me quite mad because it's not like physically making stuff. I mean, in a lot of ways it is, but in a lot of ways it's not. And all this work and nothing.
You love the Rachel McLean stuff. You really love it because she does that kind of thing as well. But she also does. They're very pink and very sort of cutesy, and it's all cupcakes and stuff. I've watched really dark messages in there. I mean,
yeah, I watched some of it not that long ago. I discovered.
I mean, there's really serious subjects.
You know, it's got all the eyes and everything, and it's very pink, but quite. It's weirder and weirder and weirder. I really like it.
When she first started, she was basically using found sound, but it was like politicians like David Cameron, but she would be mouthing the words but with these very pink backgrounds and sort of weird
bunches and things, you know, and just plastic jewellery and, you know, just this whole really kitsch, and even that in itself's a bit kind of nasty. It starts going down the nasty world route, you know, it's really over.
It's the real creepiness of
sickly, you know, and yet the themes in it are really
quite dark,
very dark, and touching on really some very political. There's always very political figures in it, isn't there? And there's always like just really serious subjects and topics in it, and it's a very interesting way to use art as that kind of.
But that's the thing with the sort of like having that sense of humour with it, I think, as well.
Yeah.
You know, you can engage with these subject matters without it becoming some sort of like, you know, sit down and listen to this lesson I'm going to teach you about being a good human. You know what I mean? So
there's also this side of it where you don't know. It's so dark. Some of it you don't know. It's like black humor. You don't know whether to laugh or not. You're questioning yourself about. Does that affect? Why is that affecting me? Why am I thinking that? Why is that creepy? Is it really creepy? You know, you're constantly when you're watching her work, questioning yourself, which I think's a really fascinating thing that she's managed to do. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think about like the old fairy tales or whatever, not the versions that we know, but you know, like the old fairy tales, and they work like that sort of thing. You tell kids about, or like, you know, Grimm's fairy tale, and they're cutting their hearts out, and like as a kid, and be like, oh yeah, read me another one, because actually we do engage with really horrible stuff like that, and you've got that kind of like, wait a sec, should I really, you know? But I think that's quite a useful tool. Like it's
we do get used to car crash TV and all that. You know, we're kind of so used to that sort of, you know, thing where we're just let's watch it. It's going to be a bit gruesome. Yeah, let's watch it. It's going to be bad. You know, but there's that irony in the fact that we do want to watch that. There's a human quality in us wanting to look at the weird things in life, the odd things in life, and the bad things in life. You know,
there was a mainstream film that I really liked when I went to see it in the cinema.
Great.
I remember that. So they were playing a lot with very dark comedy throughout in terms of disabilities, and there was one bit which really moved me, and I don't think it would have failed to move pretty much everyone else in the cinema, is if the director imagined people watching it in the cinema, that the scene was this midget watches all of his friends get murdered in front of him by the Joker, and then he tries to reach for the doorknob to get out, but he's too small to reach it. And within the cinema there, the different reactions of people made the thing unbelievably tense, which it goes beyond just watching it. If I was watching it by myself, I would feel, you know, really uncomfortable, have my own reaction to the humor. But there were some people that just treated it like a comedy and laughed, and then immediately went silent. And that kind of play between the horror of life, which we take as funny, just was something that has really stuck with me. And I know it's a massive box office hit, but I think that there was something really clever done with that, because the director was playing with what our ideas of funny means.
David Lynch, I was going to say, was the Razorhead, but I was also going to say, I don't know if you've seen any Guy Madden films as well. They're really, they're quite dark as well. There's a lot of, and hilariously funny. Yeah, the characters in them are just over the top, and yet it's kind of all done in black and white, kind of film noir kind of look, so it's got this, it should have an elegant quality, yet, it's scraping the barrel with some of the subject matter. It's like, oh, it's hilarious. It really is funny. But I mean, obviously, like
mainstream cinema doesn't usually make you willfully uncomfortable like that. So it's quite interesting, that moment in a mainstream film. So maybe if you think of the mainstream films that were made in the early 70s, where the studios kind of gave cinema over to the young directors. So there's a lot of bleak endings. There was a lot of art house kind of stuff until it stopped selling, and until Star Wars and things like that, or Jaws and things like that suddenly made, the blockbuster kind of thing. But maybe things like that moment in The Joker shows some kind of possibility that mainstream culture might, maybe there's a chance for it.
Like watching some of Fassbender's films, like I was watching Theory to the Soul the other day. I mean, that does that so well. It's a clearly mainstream film, but there are some incredibly dark elements that it treats with comedy, but at the same time, it has to be comedy because otherwise it's just sadness.
Yeah. Bradley, do you want to talk about what you've been working on recently? I know you've got a trailer.
I've been working on a number of things, really. I suppose I've been working on what appears in the dossier. So there's Disrupted Rhythms, which is a sort of film that I'm working on at the moment. So I made a film prior to this, which was the Cake Tasting Society. And we shot that in 2018, and that's now finished. That's a film, I suppose it's a sort of surreal fantasy about a mysterious cake tasting society, the 7 characters that are drawn into it, and the sort of criminal underworld out to thwart it. And it's a silent movie with a score. It's about 50 minutes long. It's got about 20 people in it. So that was finished. And then around the same time last year, I started meeting up with a group of people just to do dancing. That was sort of partly just for fun. It was in January, we sort of met up and started doing some little bits of dancing. It sort of became almost therapeutic. So we just did improvisational dance, just meet and just do whatever we wanted with some really, usually sort of music by people like, I don't know, John Zorn or Secret Chiefs 3. We'd play lots of music that would really have lots of different genres mixed in together. And we'd just sort of dance around and try different things out. But I thought that it looked really amazing. And then, we videoed it, and I thought afterwards it was looking really visually interesting in its own right. So I thought about making a dance film, and then simultaneously I started reading Henri Lefebvre's rhythm analysis. And what I liked about that was the way he sort of approached rhythm as a way of addressing things as diverse as, the heartbeat to political systems, to the way people walk down the street. And I kind of liked this way of using rhythm to kind of analyze things. So the project ended up being called Disrupted Rhythms, partly because that also seemed to fit with the kind of COVID world, because rhythms just seem to be disrupted and changing. But it also felt like it was a way of thinking about things like revolutions, for example, where rhythms again sort of change. So what I did, and so then I decided to make a film, but also not just a film, the idea that it would be a film, a book, an exhibition, and the essay that we did. And also Nick, who did the music for the Cake Tasting Society, is going to do the music for this one, so it would be an album as well. And that became one of the pieces in the dossier. So that was one of the pieces, and I'm still working on it as a broader project, but the sort of project was one of the things that sort of appeared in the dossier.
Your piece,
sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to make a brief comment. So your piece on Disrupted Rhythms in the dossier was really, really helpful for me in seeing that as a project, and the artistic, political ambition of it was much wider than anticipated when I'd heard you previously just talking about it by name. So this is what you say. Disruptive Rhythms is a poetic phenomenological investigation into this sense. Okay, you don't know which sense. This sense of disruption. It deploys devices and techniques from dance, music, painting, poetry, photography, costume, film, performance, philosophy, phenomenology, economy, history, sociology, dialectics, music theory, biology, physiology, politics, and a plethora of other approaches and disciplines useful to our cause. Its starting point, however, is rhythm. So that's a lot.
I mean, how much of that will actually become part of the work? But that, to my mind, is the sort of broader idea of what the project could be. And yeah, so how much I actually drift into those. But what I like the idea is that rhythm actually can be approached from every subject, potentially. You could do a study of rhythm from any discipline, potentially.
We had my son's heartbeat, didn't we, in one of our installations, with his heartbeat in it, and it was just
before he was born.
Before he was born, it was really. I think people just kind of maybe came into the installation and thought it was just something we'd found online or whatever, but it wasn't. It was his genuine heartbeat. It's like, it actually, in a way, when you came into the room and you were focusing around all the different aspects of work in the space, it had the fundamental, it held it all together. This heartbeat, didn't it? It just made you walk around, feel. You couldn't miss it. You couldn't get away from the. You just couldn't get away from it, and I guess it's sort of.
No, keep talking.
Oh, sorry. I'm just doing something online, so I've lost everything. I can't see you.
In a way, it's kind of, whether you're talking about disruptive rhythms or a heartbeat or whatever it is, there's that, to a certain extent, you're trying to look for, what we were talking about pure communication before. I think it kind of leads into this a little bit, is that it offers something which can't be explained with words, but it's still this way of trying to capture something that you can't actually capture, that there is a rhythm to life. Okay, what do you mean by a rhythm to life? Well, it's impossible to say. That there are just the rhythms that you feel, and that's what it's a very phenomenological kind of like expression.
And also, you put your hand to your heart, you feel your own beat, you feel your own rhythm. You put your child, your child hears you when you're carrying your child. Our heartbeat, the rhythm of life, like you say, is so intrinsic around us all of the time that we just, I guess, take it for granted. But it's just everything we feel and do has this heartbeat. Whether it's walk in the woods to when you're talking about lockdown and what we've needed to do sometimes just to feel ourselves again, feel that intrinsicness in yourself again, just feel your own heartbeat, take your time, because this time's been really anxious as well, and the heartbeat then races, and the heartbeat tells you lots of warning signs as well as, there's a lot of messages in these rhythms, I think.
Well,
really
so I've had really bad anxiety, not this year, but for like 3 years before. And what it was always focused around was my heartbeat, like predominantly. And it was always the fear that my heart would stop. And I think that in some sense, it was a very literal feeling, like of just absolute panic that my heart was going to stop. But it was also a fear that my rhythm wasn't going to be there. The thing that sustains my life would disappear or would go from me, and that's the only thing that I can sort of clock as being a thing that leads me forward.
But like you say, it's that purity, isn't it? It's that thing that's inside you, call it your soul, call it wherever you want to go, as deep as you want to go with it. But it's in every one of us. Our rhythms all beat a different rhythm, but we all beat together. We're all here beating a life, and so that mustn't be forgotten,
Yeah, and
my son was born at 1 pound 5 ounces, so he was a tiny little preemie baby. So when I had him, he went straight into neonates, and the sounds and bing bong, and his heart, if you heard his heart going fluctuating or whatever, everyone was running over to his little incubator and dealing with him, and and it was just. To me, even Nicholas, my son, has incredible kind of things about rhythm as well, and sounds, like I was saying earlier, and maybe that comes from there, I don't know. He must have been able to hear all these sounds as well, but it's a weird alarm bells, ringing noises, all sorts of things.
He plays with apps on his iPad, and it's almost like he's remixing. He's like creating his own rhythms with these Baby Shark kind of.
But they don't sound like Baby Shark when he's doing it. They're so repeated and so cut up, It's like he's doing his own little art pieces.
It's amazing. That thing of seeking like a pure unmediated communication. There's ways in which human beings, so it starts when you're a baby. If you're pressed to your mum's arms, then your heartbeat regulates itself on their heartbeat. And you find the same thing with lovers that you have or close friends that you have. I remember I was anxious with Rob a little while ago. I remember hugging him and hearing his heartbeat, and it was a way of regulating myself.
probably synchronized heartbeats in a
Well,
way.
like what I was trying to
Yeah.
say was that, you know, my big worry was when I heard the monitors going, because my son was born so at such a tiny weight, was that his heart would stop and that rhythm would no longer. So, you know, that rhythm to me was so important to hear, you know, because we weren't close together, we weren't
connected
and you know, we should be, like you're saying, you know, which is a really early normal kind of situation. It was a really abnormal situation for me and for him.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, anxious that his heart never stopped, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's strange that these things are now mediated through medicine in a lot of ways.
Oh, I bet it changed my life, you know, to thinking that his heart might stop. But that would just I wouldn't be the person I am today if that had happened. You know what I mean? I mean, it would just be